Ariana is recording it now. Very good. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang saranang gacchami. Today I want to share the story of Kisa Gotami, her background story, her poem in the Therigatha, and a little bit about her being in the position of foremost of a certain category of bhikkhunis. So this is, let's see, we're going to share screen and bring up a PowerPoint. I apologize that it's a little bit rough as far as PowerPoints go. I was putting in the last slides minutes, maybe within the last hour, certainly. And so they're not as pretty as they might have been. So there are three parts again: her story, her poem, and that foremost position. Here's where we find her story in the canons. We're starting off with that story. The story is not given in her poem. There are people who just take what's right in front of them there of her words in the poem and take that as her story and just say, well, the names got confused or something. I don't agree with that. To me, it's highly plausible, particularly in oral tradition, that a person, when talking about their spiritual awakening, would include someone else's life material, life story that was part of what informed them in their own journey. I can give a concrete example of that. When one time I heard a man tell the story of how he had his spiritual awakening, and he had been a horrible drunk before. But then one day he heard a recovered alcoholic tell the story of what had happened to him. And it was a horrific incident of what he had done in a blackout that involved the death of a person in just a truly awful way. I'll just spare you the details, but anyone who wants to know can don't ask later. But anyway, in telling his own story, it was the realization that that terrible thing that someone else had done could have been him, and he related to it, and he incorporated that into his own sobriety story. So, and that's an oral tradition there. And to me, it makes a lot of sense that she incorporated one or two, I'm going to argue two, other bhikkhunis' stories as part of what helped her to awaken. So where we do find her story is in the Abhidhamma. That for the discerning student of Buddhism is not early Buddhist text, but for the devotee it is, or it's canon. And then the rest of it is out of commentary. The commentary to the Anguttara Nikaya, where the Buddha listed her as one of the foremost disciples, the commentary to her verses, and Dhammapada commentary to two Dhammapada verses that were reportedly spoken at the time of her transformation. So that's a lot of material to work with, to pull a story together. Some of the details differ among these different sources, but mostly they're the same. Okay, so after a rough start, Kisa Gotami had been a happy wife and mother until the unthinkable happened. So many of you already know the story. just in case someone comes across this who does not know, this is one of the most famous stories in Buddhism. It contains a parable. It's actually a true life story, but it's presented as a parable. After so many years of history, it just seems like that, a spiritual teaching story. This is a woman who, the accounts differ whether she was from a family of millionaires or born very poor. One way or the other, she was deemed as poor by the very wealthy family that she married into. Poor in looks, poor in help, not good enough for them. Maybe it wasn't enough dowry. I don't know what their problem was. Her husband loved her. The family hated her. A girl in that culture went from her own loving family into the family of the in-laws, moved in with the husband and into a house that was run by the mother-in-law and father-in-law. And if they liked you, well and good. It would still be very difficult to be separated from your own loved ones. If they didn't like you, it was a living hell, and there's nothing a woman could do. She couldn't escape it. That was her fate. She was in a living hell. They didn't approve her. They didn't like her. Her name is Kisa Gotami. Kisa, I've been mispronouncing this for years. I keep mispronouncing it. I keep saying Kisa, but it's Kisa. Kisa means lean, thin. Because it also suggests, I've read it suggests like a kind of a frail quality. I'm going to call her scrawny, because that word incorporates the thinness and the lack of robust help. So old scrawny Gotami was despised in that household until she got pregnant and gave birth to a son, healthy, very lovable child. And suddenly she is in an exalted status. This is one of the difficulties of a woman who's in a culture that overly values not overly values, solely values a woman for her childbearing properties. You do it well, you're on cloud nine, you're really up there. You do it, you turn out to be barren, you're lost completely. Or your children die, you'll be blamed. So the unthinkable did happen. The child, as he was old enough to run around, even though he seemed so healthy, something happened, he died. We don't know why. This child was her ticket to every happiness. This child was dear to her heart. She adored him. She doted on him. He was also her entire identity and social status, and he's gone. Her mind bent. She cannot accept that this child is dead. So carrying, and she even has the thought, oh, these terrible people will put him out or something. And she runs from the house with her baby, her dead baby, on her hip, running from home to home, begging people, give me medicine for my child. And some people even jeered at her. They didn't understand what's gone wrong with her. Until finally she went to one man's house. One account says he was a physician, who very compassionately said to her, oh, that's a very difficult case. If anyone could help that child, it's the great physician, the Buddha. Then she runs to the Buddha in the main monastery. If the picture is covered by the Zoom faces, you can take your cursor, put it to the top, click and pull, and shift them over to where they're not in the way. This is a beautiful, beautiful drawing. I found it on an essay, a American woman's essay about this account. And she attributed it to a certain website. The website was defunct, so I can't really give proper attribution to this picture. She runs to the Buddha, begs him to help her child. He said, yes, well, he would need her to get the medicine. He tells her to go get mustard seeds. In one account, it's a single mustard seed. I made a note which, but I don't know now. In one of the accounts, it says a single mustard seed. But it must be from a family that has not known death. So she runs off with that baby, she runs off to find mustard. because that'll be easy. Any Indian household is going to have an abundance of mustard, and they're going to be generous with it. Everyone's willing to give her the mustard, but she rejects all the mustard after she asks each family, but have you ever had death here? And the responses are, well, yes, my cousin, my uncle, my this, my brother, my, so many. Another family says, you can't count all the bodies. In one account, after 3 houses, she gets the point. By another account, she does this all day long, door to door to door to door to door, until by evening, it finally is hitting her. She's not going to find mustard seed in any family that lacks death. And why is this? Because of the universality of death. So then her frenzy has lifted. She sees the truth, and seeing that universality of death, she was able to let go of the body of her baby. One account says in the woods, another says in a charnel ground. She drops the baby. Okay, and according to, I think this was from the Abhidhamma, I pulled this. She goes to him, and the Buddha says, did you get the mustard seed? And then by one account, she says, the job of the mustard seed is done, Lord. And then according to, I think this was the Abhidhamma, sorry, it could have been the commentary. I don't remember now. Then the Buddha says a couple of Dhammapada verses. Another version has her saying one of these verses. Anyway, these are, if you saw let's go back. These are verses number 114 and 247. I think the first one is 247. Better than 100 years life, not seeing how things rise and fall, is living for a single day, seeing things rising and falling. So you get impermanence, and that's more powerful than 100 years of life. And then the universality of death, not the condition of the village or the town, also not the condition of one clan. This is the condition of the entire world with its gods, the impermanence of all it is. I kind of like the version in which she says that as she lets go of the child. So here, upon hearing those 2 verses, I purified my Dhamma eye, then learned it in the great teaching, and went forth into homelessness. So she becomes a bhikkhuni. Why would she go home to that household that hates her? No reason there. She asked to become a bhikkhuni. Let's see the next. Ayya. There is one account that goes further into her enlightenment story, and that is in the Dhammapada commentary. And I'm sorry, I don't have a digital version of the Dhammapada commentary. I do have this wonderful book, Treasury of Truth, that gives kind of a summary of the commentaries of Dhammapada verses. And the commentary to Dhammapada 114 states, soon afterwards, oh, here, I like this, what she says. On hearing this, Kisa Gotami, went back to poem about death coming to all beings. Kisa Gotami fully realized the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and insubstantiality of the aggregates and attained Sodapatti fruition, so first stage of enlightenment. Soon afterwards, Kisa Gotami became a nun. One day, as she was lighting the lamps, she saw the flames flaring up and dying out. And suddenly, she clearly perceived the arising and perishing of beings. The Buddha, through supernormal power, saw her from his monastery and sent forth his radiance and appeared to her in person. Don't you love those stories? Where the Buddha is so alert, he just knows that someone's getting very, very close to awakening. Their concentration is gathering, their insight is there, and he sends a psychic image of himself to just kind of tip them over the edge. And he told her to continue meditating on the impermanent nature of all beings and to strive hard to realize Nibbana. And she reached higher stages of spiritual awakening. So, So that is the story of her awakening. Now, I mentioned about that beautiful painting, picture there, Kisa Gotami with the Buddha, and an essay by an American woman. What the American woman was writing about was that how painful it is that the death of a child seems to be necessary for a woman to attain enlightenment. And I just want to give a counterpoint to that, that any obsession is an obstruction. Children are highly obstructing only because of the passion the mother has for them. But if, you know, racing cars was an extreme passion, that would be an obstruction. Music, theater, you know, anything, even though there are good things, anything that is a passion for a person would cause them to possibly be a little bit immune to awakening, a little immune to understanding what needs to be seen about the difficulties of samsara and so forth in order to have urgency. You know, they say that human realm is ideal for awakening because the Deva realm is just, it's too beautiful and lovely. The angelic realm is too lovely and intoxicating with delights. And hell realm is too horrific for a person to, a being to be able to muster any mindfulness to understand anything. But the human realm has a mix of suffering and pleasure that a person could have urgency and capacity to awaken. Someone who's deeply involved with their, deeply attached to and involved with their children or some other passion is in a kind of a heaven realm. In the sense that it's, they're not going to be looking skeptically at samsara in a way to awaken. That doesn't mean that motherhood is an obstacle in itself, but that kind of intoxication with it would be. And Kisa Gotami was one of those who was intoxicated until samsara proved how dangerous it is. Proved it. Samsara showed her how dangerous samsara actually is. With the death of the one thing that she was most devoted, most loving to. So no, motherhood is not in itself an obstruction. And if you want to see an example of a mother who attained awakening in modern times, you could read Ayya book, I Give You My Life. I was moved by her account of how she came to have a universal love for her children rather than that particularity that catches our hearts and blinds us.